Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Thursday night saws. Hopefully we got the word out. There'll be some people joining us tonight. We are in Newport Richey, Florida. We're doing some training with the Southwest Florida Water Management District, and down here this week, and end up Saturday. We're going to be having a little workshop with Amsler's Saw Shop, and it's going to be the annual Saw Safety Day. So we're down here till Saturday afternoon anyway, and we head back home. But I hope I've got a pretty decent connection here tonight. Everything says it's pretty good. Hopefully anybody hear me okay and everything coming through pretty good? Hopefully. So I think I've got all the chat stuff up, and hopefully we have some taking part here. Just wanted to kind of hook up here tonight and just talk about some things of chainsaw. I've got pretty good news this week as far as the steel hexa saw chain. I got one of their production chains came in from distributor, and it looks really good. Actually, I got a 3/8 50 gauge 84 drive links fit the 24-inch or 25-inch guide bar, and I was a little surprised to see that. I had originally heard that it was going to be 63 gauge only in the 3/8 full profile, but that one came through 3/8 50 gauge, so I'm kind of excited. Maybe they're going to have several different configurations that they decide to bring in. But it looks like it's still going to be March before any supplies and information gets out to the dealers. Hey, Aubrey Ford, how are you this evening? Hope everything is well where you are. It is fantastic here in Newport Richey, Florida. We had 81 degrees yesterday and 84 degrees today, and just beautiful weather. Started out about 65 or something like that, and then almost got to sweating a little bit this afternoon. But it went. Hopefully tomorrow's the same. Hope I don't have rain come in, although there's some threats of it for tomorrow, and then clearing back up, I think, for Saturday for our demo with Amsler Saw. Hey, Wayne Rowan. Yeah, I'm glad that he sent the 50 gauge, and I'm anxious that it is going to be in several different configurations, because, like I say, the first ones I heard was a 63 gauge. So anything going on up your way with I guess you're a little bit farther west than some of the storms that are coming across, and you didn't get any ice or snow off of this. I think you're down in Oklahoma or something, yeah. Did have pretty good connection tonight. Everything looked pretty clear and sound good. Laura's on there moderating, so she dropped some notes if you hear anything or something doesn't come through good. Well, they didn't send me any more files, Aubrey. I was anxious when I got home Saturday to check the mailbox, and it was the new packaging on the chain and the 84 drive link 50 gauge 3/8 hexa, but it didn't have a file in there. Had a handle, so we're getting closer. But no, I think shouldn't be too many more weeks. You should start having those things available. But I really need another one to play with this new chain. So you did get a little bit of chilly weather there, huh, Wayne? I think this hexaground chain is going to be pretty cool sharpening in the field. I think it's going to help a lot of people to be able to keep the proper angles and not get too much hook. That's one of the biggest things I see is, people have too much hook, holding the file too low, and trying to make sure you get the gullet out, which is important in some cases, but making sure that you hold that up so the chisel angle is correct also, and doesn't hook in that area. And this is going to kind of be its own guiding file, so that's a pretty cool thing. I think it's going to help a lot of new users to be able to do it. Although the chain came through the boxing and everything as a full professional yellow coated chain, so it's going to be considered to be a professional chain. And it doesn't have the X series drive link where it comes up beside the depth gauge. It looks like the old 33 RS as far as the configuration on the tooth, and then the way it's ground, the gullet is really kind of very flat, so the file sits right there on that flat surface. So it's set up pretty cool. I think it's gonna work very, very well. I took some pictures, some good close-ups and stuff like that, and I'm working. Maybe by this weekend I'll have a little video out on it, so showing what the chain looks like new, the production unit. So it's quite a sharp looking chain, no pun intended. Yeah, I don't know, the square filing, chisel bit square filed is very fast and smooth cutting, but it does take a good grinder setup or somebody that has practiced with the file. And I think this hexa is going to be a lot easier for people to accomplish. Probably even, I think, more so than the round filed. I think it's going to be much easier for the average person to be able to put the edge and keep it on the chain. I'm hoping that Ferd or somebody will actually come up with an adapted version of the chain sharp, or like Steel's 2-in-1 tool, to be able to hold the file, because I think it'd be very easy to be able to do on that. So hopefully they will be working on that situation. Let's see, Aubrey, you said, when you told me to stand the saw up on its end, really helped me on my sharpening. Are you square filing, Aubrey, or are you just round filing it? Because either way, I mean, I found it to work pretty good in that vertical position, especially in the field. You can always be able to find a log or a limb or something to be able to lean it up on and get your kind of set the saw up as your top angle, and then you can see that whole surface, and you can see when you have the file too low or too high or a little bit left or right, and it makes a big difference to be able to see that. So you're touching that whole surface, and then once you practice it that way just a little bit, you could flip the saw back down flat or go to a vise or whatever, and you'll have that same feel. That's the biggest thing, is to be able to take, and go through there, and whether you twist, a lot of people twist the arm as they go through, and it does kind of straighten the arm out. I kind of just go straight, but you put yourself in line with that, and once you got that that feel of where it is in the tooth, it starts to get pretty accurate. And so, but then it can also, I use the furred tool actually in that position quite often also, because you can, once you get the tooth back, say 50% or better, you can really see what you have in the chisel angle and the cutting angles, so you maintain that proper top plate angle and all. Let's see. So you're still working on both of them, round and square. Yeah, definitely that the 345s in that vertical position. I've been doing that for years and years, and Soren always used the upright file position back in the 70s when he was doing the training in Scandinavia and stuff, and his instructors and himself, they would set up a pretty neat thing. They would fell some small trees to set kind of a corral, and that's where they did most of their maintenance and the sharpening. It was really a neat system that he would set up for that, and then that gave you the ability to lean the saws up and practice it. And he had a round file at that time. He really didn't start chisel bit filing till he got to the States and started working with Weyerhaeuser a little bit. But the round file that he had, I don't know if you've ever seen those, it was a double-ended round file. So you had filed cutting teeth on the entire surface with a small break in the middle. And the handle that he had looked like kind of like a torpedo, and you would twist it, untwist it, and put the file into it and then lock it down. It was very comfortable ergonomic style handle. And then you had the 25-degree fin on one side and a 30-degree fin on the other side. And so as you filed through, it was about 6 inches, I guess, of exposed file, and it would take, and it really helped you to be able to keep it straight. And he always sharpened with the saw upright, leaning on something, and he was very quick at it. I mean, you could take and go through that. And then he always used the flat file plate. That's what he always used to set the depth gauges, and so it worked very fast. But you had to have two tools. So when we started doing a lot of the game of logging stuff, we started to kind of show the chisel bit filed chain, square filed, and so we started pushing that. And even had I got Ziegelmeyer, actually, their machines, and then also the Sylvies, and then later on we even had one of the Symingtons. And so it once you start using that square ground chain, it's pretty smooth and fast. So let's see, Wayne, have we been taking too much gullet out, Tim, on the round filing? Been leaving a little in and seems to work better. Ponger, I don't know what that word is. Wayne, you can explain that. But actually, if you look at how the tooth cuts in slow motion, and that's what I hope to do as soon as I get a file, some more files on the Hexa. I'm gonna put together a slow motion video, and that's something that one of the steel techs had years ago when we were working on the reactive force video showing kickback and all, and did a very good, it's like 186 frames per second, I think it was, or frames per minute. No, 186, yeah, 186 frames a second, and it basically slowed down. And I've got the camera equipment to do it, and I'm going to set up one and show how the hexafiled chain works on that. But if you look at the main reason to take the gullet out, if you look at how the tooth cuts and goes up and down and then back and forward, side to side, the gullet area really doesn't touch the chip. It kind of comes out as a ribbon if the tooth is sharpened properly, and more or less it it just has the thickness of the chip. Out of the box they're 25 thousandths. A lot of people take them to 30, maybe 32, 35 thousandths below. But when you get more than that, it takes a big saw to pull it. But at 25 thousandths, you're taking a ribbon out that's about 25 thousandths of an inch, and that's out of the box type chain. And the gullet, though, as you file back, you'll notice, especially on semi chisel, but also on full chisel chain, the actual side plate sticks out some as you start to file it back. So if you don't take that gullet bottom area out, you'll end up with a point on the tooth, and then you'll have almost kind of a point down at the base of the tooth, and that sticks out past the side plate, especially on semi chisel and some full chisels. And so if you don't take that out, as the tooth is in the kerf and it starts to go sideways, it basically keeps the point from making contact on your next cut. And so if you take that gullet out, then that moves that side of the plate back behind the point of the tooth, so the tooth actually reacts as it should in the fiber. So that's kind of the process, but it's not really necessary on all chains to take that gullet out, in my opinion anyway, and looking at how it's worked over the years. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. You're not really weakening anything. It's just an added file strokes that's not necessary, and really only necessary when you get back past about half of the top of the tooth. Yeah, so it's been leaving in a little, and it seems to work better. Longer is the word. Okay, so I didn't catch that, ponger or longer, but I got it now, Wayne. But yeah, the taking the gullet out, you will end up with less tooth length to be able to work with in the long term. If you think about it, that from the point down, I always talk about it being a visual of 90 degrees. Let me see here. I might even have I think I've got. No, but I can draw it in here real quick. If you think about. Maybe I'm not. So you're looking at with your file in there 90 degrees from the point down to where the file rests, and then that perpendicular to the bar. When that tooth cuts, the depth gauge kind of hits, and then the point bites in here, and then basically the tooth rocks back. So when you see it in slow motion. Let me see if I can get another color here. That chip, kind of starts here and goes down like a ribbon out underneath, and your chisel angle actually takes and scrapes it out. And so, if you look at that, I'll get a little wider picture here. So if you can kind of picture that chip flow is going to be down, and then your top plate, as it comes down here, and you got a little bit of an offset like this, in this area right here at the gullet area, that's what's going to take and stick out. And so you got your points here, and then this, as you file back, kind of sticks out past the point. So when you take that gullet out, that's what you're doing. You're reducing the resistance in that kerf. But if you've got your side plate set up correctly, as that rocks back, it doesn't really affect that area that much. So that's kind of the situation there. So I don't know if I've got too much on the microphones here now. It looks like I've got two of them going on. I don't know what happened there. Hopefully everybody still hear me. But when I went to the iPad, let's see, webcam. Okay, should be working okay. So let's see here. Hopefully that explains something there, Wayne. And so if you think about it as you file that back, if you take the gullet out too low, then more or less you're gonna run out of side plate too quick. So Aubrey say EXL or 33RS with do you run the most? Most of what I run, I use Oregon 72 LGX is what I've been running for past few months. Other than the Hexa chain, the 33 RS is what I've used a lot of on the steel chains in the past. Who is the best chainsaw company in your opinion? That's Patrick Pollard. Okay. Yeah. Good evening, Patrick. I haven't had you on before, I don't think, have I? So anyway, a good question, and my answer to that has always been that chainsaws don't make chainsaws, people do. And I can tell you that if you stay with top 3 or 4 brands of steels and Husqvarna, which I use both now, but if you stay with those top brands and Echo and those, they all have great products. Now there are some weaknesses and changes in different model sizes and stuff, but if you go size for size, same size saw, you're probably going to end up with a pretty good cutting piece of equipment. But what I see to be one of the biggest challenges is whatever brand you go with, you've got to have a good dealer behind you. It's something to where eventually, no matter what you've got, you're going to have parts and service for that particular saw. And so that's the reason why I say, chainsaws don't make chainsaws, people do. You got to have people behind it. And the Steels and Husqvarna, they are great companies. And so I've kind of stuck with that over the years. But the biggest thing is the areas that you go or wherever you are, you're going to eventually need parts and service. So some areas I go have got really strong Husqvarna dealers. Some areas I go have got really strong steel dealers. And so that's something to consider. You've got to have good service and parts behind you if you're really going to make it happen. So that's my answer. Let's see, Wayne. Tim, I was filing the gullet too deep and getting too much hook. Yes, sir. I see that very often in the field, especially with the newer users or people that don't really sharpen all that much, like city and county and state employees that I work with. That's 90% of my training now, and I can tell you that people have got different techniques that they use or working with on the chains, but a lot of times that's the number one thing I see: damaged points and hooked side plates. And so if you think about that with the side plate, if you've got the point sticking out too far, and that would be thinking about a hook, and that's something I've talked about on several of the videos, is the 5 parts of the tooth, and the point is very important because you've got to have that whether it's a semi chisel or full chisel, you've got to have that point sharp. If there's any dulling there, it's not going to cut correctly. And then the next thing is if you take and that is hooked too much, either file too low or you got too small of a file in some cases. Either way, I mean, a smaller file will even work on a lot of the teeth if you hold it high enough. But if you get down in here, then it's going to dull quickly, and it's going to end up with a little bit of rock and roll, and it's not necessary there. And I see this quite often with grinders, because if you follow the instructions a lot of times on the setup, if you follow the instructions on the setup quite often, it'll have, like, you set the grinder angle at like 60 on the little guide gauge. Well, it's actually about 50 to 55 if you look at what most of the teeth are, say on full profile 3/8. And so people end up with that head turned a little bit too much and then cut back down in there, and you get that hook look. And so it kind of rocks and rolls a little bit too much if you get into that position. Let's see, Jacob Comfort, welcome. What depth gauge do you recommend to use for 3/8 chain? I have a cheap Oregon gauge, but it's not hardened, so the flat file chews the gauge up. Well, I don't know what to say about that. I've got I use most of the time with the training nowadays, because I'm working with mostly people who don't sharpen all the time and stuff. I'm using either the furred chain sharp, a Husqvarna Sharp Force, which is the same tool, or either the steel 2-in-1 tool, which is basically the same as the furred CSX tool, and that has the depth gauge file built into it, and so that sets each tooth in proportion to the height of the point. And I think that's one of the best ways to do it. If you go to there's the Carlton file plate, the Husqvarna raker plate, I think I saw one the other day. Somebody had sent some pictures. West Coast Saws has a gauge similar to the Carlton plate, and those take each tooth independently also, and they're very hard metal. But I really haven't seen an issue with the Oregon. I've got 2 or 3 of the Oregon gauges, 25 and 30 thousandths, and that I use our show in my training, and I've filed a good bit, and I don't think it takes all that much off, but you may have a real hardened file, I don't know. But it takes a good bit of filing, I've noticed. Matter of fact, one of them I've probably been using about a year, showing in the classes, and I don't think I've got a thousandth of an inch filed off of it at this point. But I don't know which gauge that you have. It is true. I guess the gauges that I have are the saddle type. So you've got the center section is where you file. They do have some in the kits that are on the end, and I will say that if you according to how you hold your file there, sometimes those will kind of ramp towards the end. So yeah, I could see that. But that's what I use are the flat plates. So. Oh, let's see, Patrick. You said, good evening, by the way, but you can only choose one. Who is the best? You'd have to tell me what size saw and what you're using it for. That'd probably be the thing. As far as brands, like I say, it's really what you have in a service center in your area, because that's going to be something that you've got to have at some point in time. But like I have a steel 362, actually 2 of them. I've got a 362C, which is the M-tronic version, and I have a 362, just a standard MS, and that has the adjustable carburetor. I've got that, and those two I use in areas to where the people that I'm in the training, in the training classes are using steels, and then areas that I go that they're using Husqvarna, which I'll be using Husqvarna this weekend. I'm using it this week down here. I've got a 562 XP, And so both of those saws that I've been using for the past year, I guess, they have the M-Tronic on the Stihl and got the Auto Tune on the Husqvarna. And I also have a 576 Husqvarna, and it happens to be a non-Auto Tune version that came out a few years ago. But that's the saws that I have. I do have also a Husqvarna top handle, an older 338, but I don't use too much anymore. But that's it, if that lets you know anything. But as far as brands, I'm going to tell you those two, whatever you pick out of their lines, are very, very good. They're very competitive between the two, and as I always say, they'll both make you sweat if you're cutting wood. So, and they, if you, like I said earlier, if you stay with the top 3 or 4 brands, they're gonna basically do the work that you need to do. And all of those companies have been in business for several years, so they're not fly by night. You don't have to worry about not getting parts and that kind of things, as long as you've got a good dealer in your area. And that's what I look for. In my travels with both of them, I have had to stop at different places and try to get parts, and sometimes they've got them and sometimes they don't. And that's both brands. That I talked to a power company a couple weeks ago that more or less they had changed over to Echo. They had been using Husqvarna for quite a number of years. They had run some Stihl also, but they changed over to Echo because they have a very strong Echo dealer, and they had trouble getting some parts and stuff on some of their units. So that to me is the real key factor. But both of those I would have to have as a tie. Now, if you got specific models you're asking about, then we might be able to give some more detail there. But where are you from, Patrick? I haven't seen you on the chat before. Let's see here. Got this fancy pen thing here, but it tends to battery shut off all the time. But one thing that I see also quite often on the chain is something I see a lot of times on smaller chains. And that being like on the pole saws, extended pitch 3/8 or small climbing saws, battery powered, and what happens is that the file should actually be about 1/5 of the file diameter, should actually be above the point if it's in the proper position. And what I see sometimes, people take too big of a file, and more or less on the small chain you have this way up here like this, and it creates what they call a back slope. And that back slope takes a lot of power to be able to get it to cut. You have to press on, almost like having a very dull saw chain. So you can go the other way from a hook and end up with a back slope that makes it very very hard to cut, and it will dull your saw chain very quickly also. But that's something that shows up pretty quick. But the five parts of the tooth that we talk about, the depth gauge, the point, the side, the top, and the chisel, all 5 of those are part of Mr. Joe Cox's original design on the tooth. And those things have to be correct if that chain is going to cut correctly. So I always tell people, whether you're filing or whether you got it on a grinder, that what you want to do is you want to match up to where it looks just like a brand new tooth when you file it all back, so all your angles and stuff should stay the same. And so that's what I kind of look for. But I was going to pass along too. We're starting to get some reservations in for our storm sawing workshop, and I put up a little video on it last week or week before. If you have anybody who is interested in really going through and learning the basics all the way up to some pretty advanced storm cutting techniques, we're going to be holding the storm sawing workshop in Asheville, North Carolina. It's going to be May the 10th, 11th, and 12th at the Biltmore Estates, and we'll be there for 3 days. First day is more or less half a day of classroom, and then we'll go out. I'll do some demonstration, and we'll talk through some different felling techniques. Second day, everyone will be felling trees. And looking at that, we got to create a little bit of a storm situation. So we're going to be felling trees to specific points and crisscrossing and making some different pressures and binds. And then the third day, we'll be looking at cutting those pressures and binds, and it's quite an interesting workshop. The third day, we kind of work a little bit of teams, and I'll mark these piles so that there's different pressure situations, and everybody that's gone through the course over the years. We did for about 12 years at Berry College in Rome, Georgia, not too far from the house, which was kind of convenient. But we had some requests up a little bit farther north, and Bill there at the Biltmore Estates contacted and said, if you're interested in doing one up this way, to let me know. And so we contacted them, so we set it up for May 10th, 11th, and 12th. And there's some information on our website at www.forestapps.com, or you can send an email to info@forestapps.com, and Laura will send out a information page to you. And there's a lot of hotels and things like that around the area, or you can actually stay at the Biltmore if you so desire. It's a really beautiful place up there, and they have quite a forestry system and also a lawn and landscape system there that's quite amazing. And also one thing that is a little bit of a plus, a lot of times guys have flown into Atlanta or into Birmingham and driven across, get a rental car and drive across. You can get pretty decent flights. I think there's 3 or 4 a day coming in and out of Asheville, because it's a pretty well traveled location for vacations. So it's pretty easy to get flights in and out of there. So, and I'll have some equipment there for you to use if you're flying in. You don't have to ship in something or whatever. Just bring your personal protective gear. And so that's going to be May 10th, 11th, and 12th, Asheville, North Carolina, at the Biltmore Estates. If you are in the Florida area, coming up this Saturday, and we've been doing these workshops with Amsler's Power Equipment in Brooksville, Florida, for several years. And we started off, I guess, Tim Amsler, he passed away almost 2 years ago now, but his family still runs the shop there. They're a pretty good sized Husqvarna dealer, and we've been doing their customer appreciation saw safety day for probably 20 something years. So I mean, it's always a big crowd there, and so I'll be doing a presentation from about 8 o'clock till noon, and then they have a huge feed. They have it catered in there. We're going to be over at Eden Baptist Church. They have a big pavilion outside. We'll be doing the seminar there. Then back across the road they have some hardwoods in an area, and but I think we've got pine, actually, a big dead pine or something for Saturday this time that needs to come down. So we'll be actually felling a tree, looking at some limbing and bucking, but we'll be talking about personal protective gear, sharpening, looking at some different cutting techniques, taking information for felling as well as taking information for horizontal. So it'll be pretty neat little, kind of goes kind of fast because we're just about 3 or 4 hours there, but we'll hurry up because the biggest thing is the feed there. I mean, they always have a bunch of food, so plan to come out and stay for lunch. I don't think I've missed anything. Any other questions from anyone? Jacob Comfort, if you're still on, I did a video just 3 weeks ago, something like that, on depth gauges, and I had the spec sheet for the Husqvarna file plates, the part numbers and all, and so you might check on that if you're interested in trying that. What that depth gauge plate does, it takes a ratio from the point down to the chassis of the chain, that no matter what length the top of your tooth is, that chain's still going to cut straight, because each tooth actually cuts independently, but it cuts in conjunction with the rest of the teeth on the loop. So if you have that plate set, the ratio for the actual bite that the tooth takes is set for the height of the point, and so that keeps it cutting straight and really does a really good job. But basically the furred tools, they do the same thing. It doesn't radius the depth gauge quite like the plate does, that makes it kind of ramp up to the point. But if you use that furred tool and then kind of re-radius the depth gauge as you get on back on the tooth, it does a super job. And you really have to radius that when you're using the Oregon gauges also. But it does a super job. And so if you've never tried one of those, that does pretty good. Don't know what brand chain or whatever that you're using, but whether it's the Husqvarna or Oregon or Steel, that those tools work pretty good. And Steel has that 2-in-1 tool that works very nicely. Well, folks, if there's no other questions, I've been on here about 40 minutes or so. I appreciate everybody coming out for the Thursday night saws, and I hope to get back maybe Saturday night, may do another one. We'll be back home Saturday evening, so Saturday night or maybe Sunday evening, I don't know, one of the two. But we'll be back with another live. I really appreciate everybody checking in. We had some new folks, I think, this week, and it tends to be growing. And I've got pretty neat video coming out this weekend. It's going to be talking about some training that we've had here in Florida. So it's pretty good information, I think. So look forward to that. Hope you all are subscribed, and so you get alerted to when that stuff is, or at least check back in with us. But doesn't cost anything to subscribe, so helps me out and lets me know who's interested. And also, if you've got any questions that that you'd like to have an answer on that you think other people might be interested in. I'd be glad to work up a video. Or also, we have our podcast series. It's on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and also on Google Podcasts and Anchor. And so those are running, and I copy a lot of them with the audios off of the videos, but then I also put some extra ones in. And so those are nice to be able to ride around or when you're working or whatever, and listen to the podcast. So it's hopefully you find those interesting. But anyhow, y'all have a great one, and we will talk to you next time. And please keep in touch. Good sawing to you.